York to the world. Subscribe now to the Hot 97 YouTube channel. It's Ebro in the Morning with Laura Stiles and Rosenberg.
Department of Transportation Secretary, is that right?
That's right.
Secretary Buttigieg is with us today. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on. How are you?
We are phenomenal. Thanks for coming on. Secretary Buttigieg, you said you still will respond to Mayor Pete, though.
That's right. They say once a mayor, always a mayor. It's definitely the job that shaped me the most. I try to put my mayor's hat on when I'm trying to solve problems here in this job. So, I'll answer to just about anything. We're just trying to get the work done.
I definitely want to point out you have the best so far in all of my political conversations. Would you guys agree the best governmental background we've seen? I mean, it's very clear. The green screen they're using for you is very nice.
Yeah, well, you got to have a flag. Obviously, it starts with the flag.
Have to.
We're proud of our setup here. We got a nice little media.
The
center.
lighting. I mean, look, you're glowing. Look at you.
Yeah,
it's funny, right? I'm in charge of transportation, but of course, I'm not moving around the way because of COVID, the way that most of my predecessors have been. Although, we're traveling more and more. But as you know, in these times, you spend a lot of time looking at a screen. So we're paying a lot of attention to our background too and trying to get it right. I appreciate the compliment. The folks here at the media center will appreciate it.
When this job came up, was this a specific thing that you had interest in? I mean, we know that your education's incredible. You're a military man, lauded as a mayor, but were you specifically interested in transportation, or was it one of those things that we think you'd be a good fit and then you do the diligence to get prepared?
Yeah, no, I mean, when you're a mayor, you live and breathe transportation in so many ways, right? Because it's the lifeblood of a city, and a lot of the things that I'm proudest of in my community had to do with transportation, not just making sure that things flowed well, but the relationship between how you handle a streetscape, for example, and everyday life. We had a lot of neighborhoods that had been overburdened and underserved, and we invested in the way that streets worked there, and that led to more business growth, and it made the communities better off. So not only am I just personally somebody who's always been interested in transportation, but in terms of the policy work that I think helped me get to this point, it had a lot to do with transportation. And a big part of this job, leading a federal agency, is actually working with state and local governments on their transportation issues. We send out the funding and they put it to work. So it wound up being a really good fit. And it's humbling, obviously, to be in charge of all these things, some of which I did not deal with before. Right? We oversee pipeline safety. That was not a big part of my background. We oversee commercial space travel. As you imagine, that didn't come up a lot in northern Indiana. But with any cabinet agency, you take on the responsibility and you work with these amazing professionals, these public servants who come to work every day, who are some of the world's experts in these things. And then my job is to help them be in a position to do their job and have the support that they need to do it effectively. And by the way, it's just fun, right? I mean, this is also the Department of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. So there's so many things, so many childhood fantasies, right? Wanting to get to work on that stuff. That's part of what makes it so exciting.
What's not so fun, and I think if we really dig in here, it's awesome that it's happening, but not so fun the reason that we have to specifically address it, which is the way society has been set up in this country and the racism that exists. And this is a first of its kind initiative that you're bringing to us today around roadway deaths, which disproportionately impact Black communities. You wanted to discuss that today. Obviously, we live in New York City. There's obviously roadway issues and pedestrian issues are a big deal. But oftentimes in the low income neighborhoods, which Black people disproportionately live in, the attention to, issues isn't always at the forefront. And I'd love to hear what this first of a kind initiative is all about.
That's right. So we just put out our National Roadway Safety Strategy, and we're doing it because we're responding to a crisis. The latest numbers are coming out, and they continue to show that traffic deaths are moving in the wrong direction. We're losing roughly 40,000 lives a year in this country on our roadways, and we're used to it. We're used to people routinely die. Every one of us knows somebody, right, who died in a car crash or on a roadway. And if you just step back for a second, it makes no sense that we accept that. If 40,000 people died on airline flights every year, we would be up in arms. If 40,000 people lost their lives on the subway every year in America, we would be losing our minds. But when it happens on roadways, to drivers, to passengers, to pedestrians, to bicyclists, it's been going on for so long that we kind of take it as normal. So the point of this safety strategy is to say, wait a minute, this is not normal. And not only that, but if you dig into the numbers, they are disproportionately hitting low-income Americans. They are disproportionately hitting Black Americans. Overall, we're seeing the numbers are up about 7%, but it's up more than 20% for Black Americans. And I think it's time to ask why. I mean, there are some specific reasons that help to explain why that's going on. And that means there are some specific actions that we have a responsibility to undertake to get those numbers down, to move them in the right direction. And even to embrace the idea that someday we'll get to zero, that the only acceptable number of deaths is zero. And I know that sounds pie in the sky, that sounds far off, but there are cities around the world. There are cities in the United States right now that have gotten there. Hoboken made it, I think, 3 years without a single traffic death. So it can be done, but it's never going to happen on its own. We got to be serious about this, and we got to take action.
Now, Hoboken's small town. When you're looking at a larger urban, demographic and population like a Philadelphia, a New York City, a Boston, San Francisco, where things are very packed, very crowded, and very vast as far as major metropolitan areas are concerned. What are some of those issues? You said there's specific issues. What are some of them?
So the way we think about it is we got to have safer vehicles, safer people, safer streets, safer speeds, and we got to do a better job of post-crash care. In other words, getting to people after a crash has happened. All of those things taken together, they help to decide whether people make it or whether they don't. Look, human beings make mistakes. That happens, but those mistakes don't have to turn into fatalities. So what does that mean, especially as a bigger city's taking this on? Well, look at something like the way a road is designed. Are there safe places to cross? Is the road designed to safely move vehicles as well as people to where they need to be? Or is it just designed to blast cars through as quickly as possible at all costs? And look, the truth is, it is often more likely to be the case in low-income neighborhoods, in Black neighborhoods, in a lot of rural areas. We're seeing this a lot in Indian country, where people have to walk a longer distance or make a more dangerous crossing just to get to where they need to go. And so many people we know have stories. So many of us have stories, neighborhoods that we've visited, maybe that we've lived in, where, in order to actually get to the grocery, in order to actually get to school, you have a choice. You either have to walk like a half a mile to make a safe crossing, or you have to make an unsafe crossing. That shouldn't be the choice that people face in order to go about their lives, go about their days. So we got to better design our systems. We got to better design our roads. We got to put money into it, right? Make sure we have the safe crossings. Make sure we have what's called traffic calming. That means designing a road so that when cars are going to a place with a lot of people, just the design of the road gets them to slow down, not just things like speed limits and speed bumps, but sometimes something as simple as making it a little narrower in an area where there's a lot of pedestrians, or these kind of tabletops, right, where you go up a little bit and then back down, affect the way that drivers behave. And there's a lot of other things we can do around making sure vehicles are safer. But here again, this isn't something that's happening in an equitable way, because of course it's the most expensive vehicles that have the most features that make them the safest. And a lot of Americans who can't afford that. So what are we doing to make sure that some of the safety features, like some of these technologies that'll stop a car automatically, or other things, how do we look at making those standard instead of being an expensive bell and whistle kind of thing that only people who are ready to pay extra for it can even have?
You've been vocal in the past, and I think got blowback, if I recall, about speaking out about the racism in the roadways of our country. And people were like, oh, roadways aren't racist, but the designers, the city designers, the people who mapped out these cities, specifically when you look at New York City, and you look at the way roadways were put through neighborhoods and devalued neighborhoods, and et cetera, or in Long Island, New York, where they made underpasses not able to take buses through because they knew Black people took the bus more, and they didn't want Black people going to the beach, and they didn't want buses going in, et cetera, et cetera. So you've been vocal about these things. Is without it sounds like when you're rolling this out, you're specifically not saying the words racism, but it feels like that that's the reason this took place.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example, right? If more traffic fatalities are happening in a certain neighborhood, and that neighborhood has been disinvested in for decades, or maybe even more than 100 years, and that's one of the reasons why there are not a lot of safe features there. And we know that discrimination went into that. Then we can't pretend that that has nothing to do with racism if it's a black neighborhood, right? And all I'm trying
Well,
to
you
do
also can't
is
pretend that income inequality isn't also tied to the history of this country. So
right.
income inequality, property value, divestment in neighborhoods, it all lines right up.
Right. I mean, sometimes you had a road tear up a neighborhood because that was just the cheapest place to put it. But then you ask, okay, why was that the cheapest place? Why were the property values so low there? And as you say, all of these things are related. Now, when I bring these things up, or when I tell the truth when these questions come up, it's not about beating people up. I'm not trying to make people feel bad. I'm trying to get us to solutions, because there are solutions. So, especially thanks to the president's infrastructure law, we now have billions of dollars to work with to make things better. We're opening up a $6 billion Safe Streets for All fund. And part of that is to identify places where we can make safety investments. We've got another program called RAISE, which we can use on just about any kind of transportation investment around the country. And one of the things that we did with our last round last year was we identified a program in South LA. And because we put out the word that we cared about things like making sure that there was equity in these improvements, they put together this application. They weren't even going to apply, but they saw that we cared. They had this vision for greater safety in that area. They applied, and the application on its merits won and got funded by our department. So these are the kinds of things that we can do. I'm not bringing up these issues just to wallow in them. I'm bringing them up because we have the responsibility and we have the means to do something about it. And like you said, there are tons of examples in New York. The historic example you mentioned, the underpass, the Cross Bronx Expressway getting a lot of attention as kind of a classic example of how a piece of infrastructure that can connect can also divide. If you get into the suburbs, I remember the mayor of Mount Vernon explaining to me that in her community, there are a lot of people who could get to Midtown more easily than they could get across town to get to a grocery or school or neighbor or church in their own community. And again, I'm not saying this just to describe the problem. I'm saying this because we can do something about it, and we need to. Now, sometimes that means highways need to move. Sometimes it's not as giant of a repair as that. You can just create connections over them or under them, just safe ways to get people to where they need to be. And the fundamental mission of my department is safety across. Like you said, there's a lot of fun stuff, but like you said, the most important thing is something that's maybe a little less fun, but so important. That's just keeping everybody safe. And yes, we've got to pay attention to racial and economic fairness and justice when we're talking about who is most unsafe, who is most vulnerable, and what we can do about it.
Now, speaking of safety, safety obviously in terms of airline travel has been a big thing over 20 years now. And it feels like the one area of transportation that never seems to improve. It seems like the flying experience gets worse and worse for the consumer. Is this under your purview? Is there any plan or hope for how to make sort of airline travel a more enjoyable, or just the last couple of days here in the tri-state, people have just been stranded at JFK. It's just sort of been a nightmare. Anything on that front for you and your department?
Yeah, there are. I mean, I can't promise we can fix everything. Can't if you don't like the snacks you're getting, there's not much we can do about that. But the stuff you were talking about, I mean, making sure that people can get to where they need to be, there's a lot we can do about that. I mean, the air traffic organization is part of my department. Now, again, the fundamental part is safety, and the safety record is quite good. I mean, think about this, right? Airline travel is dramatically safer than driving. And this is a form of travel that involves putting people in a metal tube and shooting them through the air at almost the speed of sound. And yet we're able to have a very, very low number of injury or fatal crashes every year. And that didn't just happen. That happened because the FAA has really high standards. We're also issuing new rules to help with what's called unfair or deceptive practices. That means if an airline is doing something that is not above board, we have a way of dealing with that through our consumer protection authorities. We had a lot of issues with people being able to get refunds, for example, because of COVID. And we took some enforcement actions on that. Look, we want the airlines to do well. Obviously, we want them to thrive, but they got to treat customers fairly. And that's something that we will continue to be on the lookout for.
Mayor Pete, not the mayor anymore, but still Mayor Pete, Secretary Buttigieg. When they asked us if you could come on the program today, my first response was, Oh, it's getting close to the midterms. He's trying to get out here and get in the front of people again. He want to run for president again. Ooh, it's eating back up. I know it's not your current job right now. You sound focused, and I love this new plan. But let's talk about the future, and let's talk about the future of the Democratic Party while we have you. Is that an area of interest still for you one day?
Yeah, I don't know if I'll ever run for office again, but what I know is that every time I've had a job, I try to do it the best I can, and if I do, then I've done right by the job, and I know that's the right thing to do for the future too. I have a great job right now. I have a great boss right now, and I have a great responsibility right now. I mean, we've been trusted with more than $500 billion to use to make transportation better, to make people's lives better in this country. And we got to get that right, along with all the day-to-day things that my department does that most people don't even hear about, from pipeline inspections to making sure that everything's going well on our maritime sector, everything else that we do. So I got more than enough to keep me busy without getting caught up in politics at the moment. And I got to tell you, somebody who was involved in lots of campaigns and lots of elections over the years, and that was rewarding. I loved it, but it's kind of nice to be focused on governing right now. The whole point of a campaign, right, is that if you win, you get to govern, and I'm knee deep in that kind of work right now, and that's keeping me pretty busy.
Well, because it sounds like you can actually get some things done right now, and you don't have to play politics, and you get the budget, you get the assignment, you roll it out, and you go fix stuff. That sounds what this job is.
Yeah, I mean that's how we try to view it, right? Now obviously there's all kinds of things that make that complicated. There's the regulatory picture. There's a bunch of different players who all have their ideas about how they think the money should be spent. And we're trying to make sure we're being responsive to everybody. We're working with mayors, we're working with states, we're working with tribes. We've got when I was a mayor, there were 9 council members. That was my kind of oversight body. Now I got 535, 100 senators and 435 members of the House who have their own concerns. They're thinking about their states. They're thinking about their districts. So a lot goes into making this work. But the bottom line is we can deliver. We can make a road smoother. We can fix a bridge that's been out, that people have to drive half an hour out of their way just to get to where they need to be. We can do things to make the ports run better and help goods get to where they need to go. We can make the airline experience better and keep it safe. We have the tools to actually do that with. I mean, our entire lives. I mean, easily my entire life anyway. I'm 40 now, and it's been about 40 years of a pattern of us investing less and less and less and less in public goods and public infrastructure in this country. And that changed. That changed the moment that the president got out that pen in November and signed this bipartisan law. So for all these areas where the big issue is we don't have any money, well, now we have some money to work with. And so now we're going to find out what's the next big issue. If you have the money, what's the next biggest obstacle to getting something done? And how do I tear it down? That's fun. I mean, that's why people who love public service get into government to try to do it. It's hard, but it's fun. And it's the thought that when I look out the window of my office and I see somebody driving by in a car, or I see somebody going down the Anacostia in a boat, or I see a plane going overhead, that I can make life a little bit better for them. That's really exciting. It's what we came here to do.
When you look at your role right now, is the New York City Subway ever come up on the docket?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Can you just tell them to put the barricades in and stop playing around? Like, put the barricades on the thing so people can't get pushed into the tracks. Every major city on planet Earth has it.
Yeah.
Why is our major subway thing so trash? Like, just fix it.
So, look, just fix it is something I heard a lot when I was mayor. And I know that there's a lot of work that the MTA and the local authorities are doing. We want to support that. We want to help with anything they need. Most of what we do is making sure the funding is there, but we got some standards too. And we're always talking to them about what needs to happen to go forward.
So, but you can't basically pick up the phone today and say, yo, cut the check, put the barricades up.
Not quite like that. No, I mean, look, we try not to tell the local authorities what to do. I mean, we got our standards, right? But at the end of the day, I mean, the way our whole system works is that cities, states, they figure out what's best for them. We provide the guidance, we provide the kind of left and right boundaries, and now we're providing a lot more of the money. But we're not going to have all the answers in Washington. We're going to look for good answers. We're going to share what we know. Look, the last thing I want to do is be, ordering cities or states around. We're just trying to help them do what they need to do. And I know that in New York, residents are going to hold their elected officials and their authorities accountable, just like happens in every state and every city. And then I'm held accountable by how good a job we do is supporting everybody.
Go ahead. Sorry about
I was
that.
just going to say, Pete, on a personal note, we wanted to congratulate you on the arrival of your babies back in September. And what is dad life like? How much has that impacted your cabinet life?
It turns everything upside down. I mean, every working parent knows this, right? I mean, all of a sudden, I didn't think I had a lot of free time before, but now I realize how
Zero.
different it is, right? Yeah, because every minute, and I mean, right now my husband's with the kids as we speak. Probably they obviously they don't care whether it's a weekday or a weekend. They want their bottle. They got to have their nap time. Right now, our son likes to party at about 4 a.m. and at about midnight, and he doesn't care that it's a work night for me. So
Throwing
you do
back
that
shots
work.
Of formula. What's he drinking over there?
Pretty much, yeah.
Formula.
Yeah, we're getting him into sweet potato now too, just to
Ooh,
shots of sweet potato at 2 a.m. Let's go.
Yeah. But no, it's like what everybody says it is. I had a lot of friends who became parents. I didn't really understand what they were telling me until it happened, and of course it totally changes your relationship to the future, right? I mean, you're looking in the eyes of this little child, thinking about the world they're growing up in, and some of this. Politics is full of talking about the future. So much of our rhetoric is about the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it means something different when the future is where your kid is going to live. And I just think about everything differently.
Did the president pull you aside and say anything about fatherhood when he found out?
Yeah, he did. He's a really family-oriented person. So especially, our kids went through some really tough medical issues early on. They're doing great now, but especially our son, he was in the ICU for a while. And when the president found out about that, he pulled me aside and just said, whenever you need to take care of your family, take care of your family, and we'll figure out the work stuff. And when you're in a high pressure job with long hours, it means a lot. Any job, but all the way up to when you report to the president of the United States, to have your boss pull you aside and say that he gets it and he wants you to be a good dad as well as a good secretary, meant a lot to me.
That's dope.
I definitely saw you being unfairly criticized for taking parental leave, which I thought was extremely ridiculous. And I feel like that should be, I mean, it's a topic that we've seen it come and go, but it should be a right to take maternity leave, paternity leave. But I just talk to me about how important it was for you to be able to do that, to be there for your family.
Yeah, it was huge. I mean, look, in most parts of the world, this is standard. And yet
Right.
for most Americans, it's not. Now, a rank and file federal employee gets 12 weeks now. So that's a big step in the right direction. It's one of the few things that happened under the last administration that I agree with, but that ought to be for everybody. Now, obviously, a job like mine, I couldn't take 12 weeks, but I took the time to be able, and by the way, we became parents on about 24 hours notice of premature twins. We've been on the list for a while. And then we got the call. And, being a parent always turns your life upside down, but definitely like that. And we were in the hospital for a while early on because they were premature. Just getting them out of there took a while. And being there for my spouse, being there for the kids, not just the joyful side of spending time with your children, but just the work of it, right? Just the physical work of being there when they need to eat every 3 hours on the dot. And sometimes you couldn't get them to sleep. And of course, I was taking care of business when I had to. If there was a call that couldn't wait, if there was a memo that couldn't wait, I'd have my iPad in one hand and my baby bottle in the other one, dealing with what needed to be dealt with, even if it was 4 a.m. But every working parent is dealing with this, and America makes it way too hard to be a working parent. And I'm not saying this for me. I'm mindful of how incredibly fortunate I am, but you think about what we put people through because we don't have parental leave for everybody, because we don't have affordable childcare for everybody. This is exactly what the president's proposed, by the way, in this Build Back Better legislation, is to make it easier to be a parent, make it more affordable to be a parent. Not only that, when you do that, more people who want to work can be in the workforce. I was just in Kansas City, and we were talking about how to just get enough workers to help do some of the work that improving the airport, building the roads, fixing the bridges. And one of the things they're hitting is that there are a lot of people, and by the way, a lot of Black and brown and workers and women who would be great in the construction industry, could make good money, whether you got a college degree or not. There are these jobs there. And one of the biggest obstacles was a lot of folks who didn't already have, many generations of their family in the industry. Just getting a foothold in construction was something as basic as childcare, right? And they couldn't get the childcare, and they couldn't take advantage of this good job opportunity. And then it's a vicious cycle. You can't afford the childcare because you don't have a job. We can do better.
Don't have
America
a job. Don't have a job. Can't get your credit score up. Can't get your credit score up. Can't buy a home. Can't buy a home. Can't build wealth. Can't build wealth, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly. And we could do something about that. And the president's saying that we should. That's what Build Back Better is all about. And so, it just gave me, a whole different perspective on all of these things. But, I wouldn't trade it for the world. I hope I don't sound like I'm complaining. We've had, every parent has their late nights and their ups and downs, but it's just
definitely doesn't sound like a complaint, but I appreciate, as listening to you, I appreciate the honesty in how not easy it is. Yeah. And I think that people hearing your voice right now probably appreciate that as well. How would, if someone listening to you speak about this right now and they're like, listen, I don't know about any of this money from the Build Back Better plan going to roads and all these opportunities. I have not heard about my representative or someone in my community having access to this money. How can people go see what is going on and what is planned for their neighborhoods, et cetera, et cetera?
So a couple of things. And first, there's a website. There's always a website, right? So ours is called build.gov. And if you go there, build.gov, there's a lot of information even now about all of these different programs that we're setting up. And there are something like 40 programs just in my department alone that are new. Some of them are huge nationwide efforts, everything from improving ports to those dollars I was talking about that'll go to communities to help them with safety improvements. Something as small as a crosswalk or as big as a new airport might come as a result of this bill. So there's, if you really want to get into the kind of the guts of it, see how the dollars break down, you can go to that website, and it'll keep getting updated as the programs get designed. But the other thing to do is to go local. Again, a lot of what we're doing is we're just pushing a lot of dollars out the door with certain basic standards attached to them, and then it's up to the states or the local governments to do something with them. So it is a good time to talk to your council member, talk to your mayor, or reach out to your mayor's office, reach out to your state representative or your federal representative. And if you've been thinking about how this highway has gone through my neighborhood for 50 years, and I want to know if we can get in on some of these dollars to get a connection across it or under it or move it. Or if you want to know what would it actually take to get a transit stop in my neighborhood, or you're wondering, air quality in my neighborhood is terrible, and I heard that there's dollars for green investments. What would that mean for me? It's a great time to contact the people who make decisions in your state or in your city, because they're the ones who are going to be making applications to us, or even just taking the dollars we're sending out and deciding how to spend them. So that's different everywhere, but obviously New York, believe me, you got some very active leaders in New York, your senators, your congressional delegation, your mayor who are always letting my department know what they feel New Yorkers need. But you'll get a lot of information from there too.
His name is Pete Buttigieg, Secretary Pete. Mayor Pete still works, but Secretary Buttigieg. We appreciate your time, man. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Same here. I appreciate it. Great being with you.
Take care.